Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here. I probably met some of you a while ago when we were planning for these engagements. My name is Paula Wang. I'm the Director of Institutional Transformation at the Hope Center. What that means is that I work with institutions to help them implement evidence-based and best practices in reference to basic needs. I'm delighted to be here. I've done work around basic needs for the last, it's almost 10 years. I also was the first and former director of a single stop office in Philadelphia. So I've done the work, I've led the work, and I know how hard it is to get this work done. I'm excited to be here to talk about public benefits today because it is a very important resource for students, and it's an important way to help them pay for the cost to attend college. So delighted to be here. Back to you, Angelina.
Thanks, Paula. So we won't make everyone do introductions, but I will ask just two short favors of you. The first is if you could update your Zoom name to include the institution that you're from. That will help us just understand who you are a little bit. And then I'm also going to launch just a short poll to kind of gauge who's in the room. And again, this just helps us understand sort of the perspective that you all are bringing where you sit in this work, that sort of thing. If you're in the other category, or if you just feel like introducing yourself in the chat, please do, your name, your role, institution. Well, another couple seconds to fill this out. Thank you to those of you who are updating your Zoom names, very helpful. All righty, I think we have most of the folks have responded. So we've got a good mix, as you can see, kind of across the board in institutions, good amount of student support services, lots of other as well. Again, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that's great. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. I'm going to get us started just by doing a very quick summary of the pre-work video that we sent around and get us thinking about some of the themes and what we're going to be talking about today. So if you didn't get a chance to view the video beforehand, it was a short student testimonial from a student named Freddie. One of the biggest things that he starts out by explaining is that he didn't know about the supports that he qualified for and were available to him. He found out by happenstance. Freddie's example, he was on a campus tour and he learned that there was a resource center and that he was eligible for benefits through that tour, which we know that many students don't have that kind of opportunity. He also described the process that he went through as thorough, in his words. He had multiple meetings with caseworkers. He had to provide many different documents. He compared it to buying a house, which whether you've bought a house or not, I think we all kind of know that that's an intense process. And these are barriers, right? So especially for students that are experiencing crisis, this is a challenge that we should be thinking about. And it really connects to our previous conversations about financial aid and about emergency aid and the importance of making these processes less complex and with fewer requirements. And we know that in some instances, we don't have full control over all of the requirements or all of the processes, but we do have control over the supports that we provide students to go through these processes and the way that we communicate to them. Freddie's example, you know, he had mentioned that he had an institutional liaison there that really helped him. That person explained and translated the requirements and the processes in a way that helped him get through it. And the last thing that, you know, I will sort of say, the big takeaway for me, something that I held on to was Freddie said, college is about how supported you are, right? That's a quote from him. It wasn't just about your grades or how you're doing in your classes. And as we go through today's session, will prompt us to think about what this means for how we all support students, what it means for academic supports, and how much something like a bus pass can really mean for Freddie's success writ large and for the students that you work with. So the quick summary that will help us sort of transition in today's conversation, which is about public benefits. I'm going to hand it over to Paula to walk us through our goals for today and what we're going to be talking about.
Thank you so much. And I encourage all of you to use the chat to ask questions or engage and share best practices, whatever innovation or outstanding initiative you have in place. Please share with others, because the knowledge in the room is the most important part. My role here is to facilitate the conversation and kind of lift public benefits at all levels. This matters to you as a leader, to you as a support staff, to you as a researcher, to you as an advocate. How we promote public benefits will increase students' ability to afford college. And so today we're going to just understand a little bit about that. My role is not to make you an expert on what and how or the eligibility criteria. We're not going to stop on that. What we are going to focus on is why, the great opportunity that we have, and what do we need to do or how can we do it. So my goals, and I welcome your input, my goals are to create a common understanding of what these public benefits are and identify strategies so you can lift them on your campuses to increase student awareness and participation. We're going to learn that the need is higher than what the use is like. And so we're going to see how we can address that gap. We're going to also learn about effective approaches to assist students. And we're going to talk about what you're doing. And we're going to talk about what we have seen in other parts of the country. So if that is okay with you, I'm also open for anything else that you want to cover. Please use your chat and add a line or two before we move on. All right. I'm not seeing any movement. So let's talk about Freddie, right? You may have worked with a Freddie, or you may have heard of a Freddie. Freddie is one of the many lucky students who got this support and had learned about it during a tour. But a lot of students don't know what they need, and what they're dealing with is just scarcity. They lack resources, they lack support, they lack context of what they're supposed to ask in a college or in a university. They're in higher ed to complete their degree, to learn, and to do homework and work on projects. Maybe also to connect with other people, but they're not there with a mindset that they're going to be able to get all these other supports to help them for the things that they never anticipated that they were going to. Students are stressed out and they take out loans and they complete their FAFSA, and if they get their schedule, they feel like they accomplished a big deal. However, they forgot to think about how and the ways that they're going to pay for their food, for their utilities, for their transportation, for their childcare, for their medical assistance. Now with COVID, we have also this big barrier of mental health. So when we provide the support, when we have the processes in place, we help students organize, and we can help them prioritize, make decisions, and also understand that there is help for them. This helps students belong to the institution. The sense of belonging, the culture of caring, it starts right here. And public benefits have never been more important. It's a great opportunity that we have, despite the misfortune of the effects of COVID, that now we know that food and housing insecurity are a problem, and there are supports. Today, we're going to talk a little bit beyond financial aid. We're going to talk about something sustainable. That is what public benefits are. It's something that can support students, not at one time, but a semester, two, or while they're in their experience navigating college. So let's move to the next slide and talk about why. This is part of what I was saying. They are not really paying attention to what financial aid doesn't cover. And they may find a surprise before they have to drop classes, or even after they have to drop classes. And you know what that means, right? That there are other costs of attending college. So this may help them. And then we have data that by connecting with public benefits, and we're going to share these studies with you, by connecting with public benefits, they increase retention rates, graduation rates, degree completion, and their communities at the very end are the ones who benefit. They also, students, have the opportunity to decrease their work hours so they can focus on learning and get their degree sooner, get less loans. And this assistance doesn't cost anything to you. As an institution, it costs zero. If somebody else, through our taxes, that has the opportunity to pay for the support that you are going to provide. I have to make a note that from the 18% of students who use public benefit, eligible for public benefits, only 3% do. So think about what that translates into your retention and graduation rates. The other part is you have public benefits. Right now you have HERF funds and you can provide more emergency aid assistance. But in the long run, your funders will be looking at what you're doing around this topic, because it is up there in the scale of high priorities for funders. And there are multiple foundations willing to support colleges like you to help students do this. So let's move on. And as you see, I'm kind of diving into what public benefits. I just want to go through what I'm referring to when I say public benefits. The column in the left are the benefits offered by the Department of Social Services, by the County Assistance Office, and the benefits on the right are other benefits that can help support students paying for college. So SNAP is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We also know them as food stamps. It is a one-time, once a month allotment of money. It depends on the student work status, household, the amount of classes that they're taking, their the condition that they have, sharing meals with other members of their family. But the opportunity here is that because of COVID, students who were before not eligible for SNAP are now eligible to get this ongoing support to pay for food. That money can also release some of the costs that they need to inquire on to pay for the supplies for their classes or transportation. SNAP connects with additional resources like Freddie explained to us, right? So there are some conditions where SNAP recipients can get books, textbooks, can get uniforms, and can get assistance paying for even tuition. SNAP is one. Students may or may not be very excited about applying for SNAP. So we have other supports in place that they may be able to get before they connect with SNAP. So any of these is an entryway to the others. Medicaid is free preventive healthcare. CHIP is healthcare for children with which parents work, but they cannot make it to Medicaid. Right next to that, I would say we have the Affordable Care Act Marketplace. The Marketplace open enrollment season is going on right now. And for students who don't apply and don't qualify for Medicaid, they might as well be able to get a plan under the Marketplace that is helpful to them, so they don't inquire into that for health purposes. And this is completely linked to mental health. So I'm raising a flag there, because if you talk to students about health insurance, they may be more likely to feel compelled to apply. We're going to share where students need to apply in Texas, so you can have that resource as part of the site that you have access to. And then let's move into WIC, which is Food for Children Under 2, and Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is cash assistance. Cash assistance is a small amount of cash for folks who have no income and have children or dependents. It is given bi-weekly, but it's also connecting students with support services like the ones that Freddie described. So some colleges can make partnerships with the state and have programs in-house to support parenting students. And remember, they're a third of our student body. So this is extremely important. I know how much in Texas you are focused into helping parents. And this one is, I think, as people say, king benefit because of the multiple referrals that students get. including childcare, including other benefits. So we have LIHEAP to pay for utilities. Students don't get any money, but the utility company gets some of the subsidy to minimize the cost of electric or gas, whatever they use to pay for heat. And that is directly related to housing insecurity. So we know students get shut up notices, can get evicted because they do not pay their utilities in time. And again, this is something that you can tap into and doesn't cost you any money. Your institution might as well be able to help in the process of paying a shut off notice to avoid it, and then connecting students with this benefit. Tax credits is enormous. Why? Because it brings a big chunk of money to students so they can secure their housing, their food, and other basic needs. How it works is you can partner with a VITA site, and that VITA site will do free tax preparation for low income students. I think the income eligibility is between 52 and 54,000, and students who attend classes the previous year can get up to $2,500 in tax refunds through the American Opportunity Credit if they worked, and if they didn't, up to 1,000. That means a lot. That means transportation for a semester, for example. We also have the earned income tax credit and the child credit. So taxes is a big assistance to students. And last and not least, unemployment. I'm not going to spend too much time in that because I would assume that you know that if students work, they can get some of the income that they receive temporarily. But what we learned during the pandemic is that students didn't apply because they didn't know that this was available to them. We're going to look into data about that after we do a short, small group activity. So I'm going to pass it on to Angelina and open it for questions or comments if there is anything that I missed or that you would like to learn more about.
Yes, so please, if you have questions right away, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. We're just going to break out into a quick small group activity. If you don't know one another, please introduce yourself. And then we're just going to talk about what is happening on your campus in regards to lifting public benefits. How are you providing sort of supports to students or increasing awareness? That sort of thing. So just to get a sense of who's all doing this work and what are you doing on your campus. So with that, I'm going to break us out and we'll just spend about 5 minutes in these breakout rooms. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some good conversations with your colleagues. We're going to do just 2 quick polls to kind of get a sense of what the consensus is in terms of if your campus is providing supports and then also the approach to providing support. So here's the first one. Right, another few seconds to respond to this. And feel free if you're in the other camp, if you'd like to put in the chat, maybe what you're thinking by that response, that would be great. Okay. So this is great. Lots of campuses offering these supports. A few of you, not sure what the supports are, if they are provided, and then there's another, but the majority we like to see offering supports. Okay, the second poll here is how you're offering supports. What's your approach? And this is like a multi-select, right? So if you're taking multiple approaches, select multiple. Okay. A few more seconds to respond. We've got a good split of approaches here. my last call. Okay. So like I said, pretty good split. Lots of partners, which is great. We'll talk a little bit about that. A centralized office, which is definitely a best practice. Online resources as well, making it easier for students to find this on their own. Some I don't knows and some others. Again, open to the chat if you want to elaborate a little bit there. I think what we're going to do now is we asked if you had any questions when you registered this, and we want to make sure that we kind of address some of those questions. So Paula's going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to move into a bit of an overview about SNAP and some strategies and things like that. Paula, go ahead.
Thank you. So it's great to see that you have centralized offices, and I would have to say that there is some reading to do that we're going to post on the site. So you can look at the different models that these centralized offices can use to approach this work, because this is where students can really learn about it. You submitted questions about getting the word out to students about public benefits. So what we've seen around the nation is a variety of efforts, from using students to put the word out, to including information in financial aid and bursar communication, to using the syllabus as a means to get this information out. So when the semester begins, maybe you can engage or before the semester begins, you can engage faculty and some departmental heads in raising this issue to them and highlighting why is this important. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what this is. This presentation is going to be available to them if they so choose to watch it. And we can build a community where everyone is informed and where everyone is able and equipped to disseminate. So part of the getting the word out is utilizing faculty and staff, utilizing all the tools that you've used before, including the website, making easy to find this information. We have a guide, a Beyond the Food Pantry guide, that we're going to post, or maybe it's already posted on your site, where we talk about what these websites should look like and how can they really inform and equip students to take the next step and connect with assistance, because that's critical. The other part of it is using all the systems that you have in place. If you are using Canvas, maybe creating a module where all these basic needs supports are, and highlighting that the public benefits aspect is very important and who can help. I saw someone posting on the chat that college counselors are site navigators. These people are extremely important. They are one of your outlets. So anyone can be activated and recruited to be part of it. Now, you need to use visuals as well. So I hear from colleges that they're not using any letters, that they're stepping away from phone calls, because of course is not exactly conducive to action. So postcards that the marketing department creatively puts together to make them sexy, to use a language that is not diminishing and it's more like supportive and welcoming, is going to be important. You also submitted a question about ensuring that students are well informed. So what does that mean? That probably means that if students are experiencing basic needs, they know to know what that is. They need to know what is basic needs. They need to be able to relate it to something that is personal. So going down to the language that they use, instead of making it very administrative, because in higher ed, we are very administrative and we can get very specific about terminology. But in this situation, we need to use their language and how they would understand better. How do you do that? Use students. Pay students to give you feedback through a focus group, or engage a student club. And that way you will get the best information from the best people that can contribute to getting a good message out. How do we be proactive to locate these students is one of the questions. So data is fundamental. And there are a couple of things that I'm going to talk about when I talk about SNAP, but I'm going to give you a little bit of heads up before. Right now, you have a great opportunity with Zero EFC and the connection to SNAP. SNAP during COVID bent some of the requirements, and 0 EFC students can qualify for food stamps if they meet other criteria. So identifying those students can be one of the first steps that you take, along with Medicaid. So it's not only talking about SNAP, it's talking about, you can talk about food assistance and other resources, connect them with the centralized office on your campus that provides this support, and then they are in charge of screening, informing, supporting, connecting, following up. So it needs to be a series of steps. It needs to be engaged so students really get the assistance and participate in the benefit. And we know because of our evidence and other evidence in the country that students who use, as I mentioned at the beginning, public benefits have higher rates and possibilities to graduate and persist. So the last question that I wanted to address was, what additional financial resources are out there? We talked about taxes. Tax credits are incredible. Emergency money to pay for utilities and rental assistance is very important. Some counties may have money in Section 8. There are housing vouchers that may solve some of the housing issues. They're not exactly a straight through solution, but it's feasible. And there are programs that we know in Texas are working with some developers that they build housing for students. They build housing, and whatever doesn't sell, they are willing to make arrangements with colleges. So maybe as a follow-up eventually for this group, we can do a session about housing. Housing is very, very, very tricky because of the complexity and the lack of resources. So right now, HERF allows us to give emergency aid for students experiencing housing barriers and insecurities. But in the long run, we need to find sustainable solutions that allow them to come to class and go back to a place where they can focus on doing the homework and feel safe. I'm gonna move back into our slides if that's okay. And I would ask Angelina to show us this slide, because we need to understand why students don't apply for benefits, right? We can make all the efforts. We can send text messages, we can send emails, we can have the information on Starfish, on Canvas, we can do everything that we've discussed. But if students think that these programs are not for them, or somebody needs them more than them, or that they don't think that they're eligible, we have a problem. This is how we target who we need to support. I have to here raise a flag about disparities. Usually, students who need the most assistance are those who will seek the least amount of help. So let's look into SNAP as an example of what these public benefits can look like in reality. So as I explained before, is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, well known as food stamps. People get a debit card, they pay during the month. It's not a one time, every time they need until they run out of funds. And in Texas, you have an app that allows them to see what this looks like. If they apply, they can apply online. And if they do it and they download the app, they can see what are the paperwork that they need to submit to keep enrolled, what are the balances that they have. They don't have to use or lose, they can accumulate. This is extremely helpful during the holidays. SNAP has an emergency allotment. So when students really don't have anything to eat and your emergency aid is not fast enough to solve the need, SNAP is a good solution. Let's go into the next slide and see what is the amount of money that they get. SNAP defines household in a very tricky way. So students who are older than 22 are able to get their own food stamps if they meet certain other requirements. But if they're within a bigger household, you see how the amounts increase. This is why it's so important to screen them, because if we ask the right questions and understand if their age, their college enrollment, their work hours, and their household and citizenship status fits into this category, it's just questioning and listening in a way that we build trust and connect students with the right supports. There's nothing more frustrating than to tell a student, hey, you are eligible, right? It's always like, be on the blurry side. You may be potentially eligible, and this can be in communication and all the other channels I mentioned, but you may be eligible. If you say you're eligible and hey, this is for you, and they're not, there's a lot of time, a little bit of stress involved, or a lot of stress involved, and they're very intrusive questions. And we need to be aware of that as leaders. So when we talk to our teams, we can begin to create a compassionate approach to this subject. But when we are at the front line, we also have that layer of understanding, so we can understand that applying for food stamps is not 1, 2, 3, go. It is a process that takes many steps, as we talked about in the beginning. It needs a little bit of holding hands, because the translation of all this complex language that is used in the application may be broken down and may deliver a message that says to students, yes, it's possible. Yes, you can. Yes, you have support. Next slide, please. So students are eligible for SNAP. I'm not going to go in detail about this, but now they have a higher eligibility probability. Next slide. And that is thanks to COVID. COVID makes zero EFC and students eligible. They don't need to participate in work study. They have higher likability to be eligible for SNAP. So what do we do here? Bursar communication, financial aid communication. We can identify students in these departments and work with our basic needs centers to send text messages, send emails. We have studies that nudging students works and has a high impact in benefit participation. Again, student success, ultimate goal. Next slide. All right, the problem here is the gap. We have high use, low use, and high need. We also talked about disparities. Certain groups, of course, our African American, our Latinx communities are least likely to get these support, this information, and these assistance. So we need to keep an eye on them and make sure that we understand who our students are and how do we work with these students. So we make sure that those in need are the ones who get the support, and everybody knows about what this is and what does it look like for a student getting cash assistance and childcare and being able to succeed, getting food stamps and Medicaid and being able to succeed. It's all connected with your pathways and your student success centers, because this works and there is evidence and it's possible and it's easy. We just need to get a little bit more poised in how do we screen students to better assist them. Next slide. All right, so we're gonna put this case study in here, and I want you to read it and add a question to the chat box. If you were in the bursar's office, regardless of whether you sit at a leadership position or you have a student support service position, you right now, for this case study purpose, are meeting with Marcus at the window. He's a second semester student. He's taking 4 classes towards his degree, has a 3.0 GPA. He also has a child, and he's telling you all of this while he's getting to the point of where he needs help, right? So he lives with his partner, he lost his job, and he can't afford to pay the bills, much less the balance that he has to stay in school. So he's thinking about dropping out. I want you to drop on the chat box, what do we need to learn to identify what type of public benefit or financial support does he need to stay enrolled? You can also, right next to that one question, point him to assistance to connect with that support. So if it's an office, if it's a partner, you would in the beginning mention a couple of ways that you provide support. So what does this look like? And then as a bursar representative, what is the message that you need to give to Marcus? So I'm going to step back for a second and encourage all of you to use the chat to see what we can come up. This shouldn't take us more than 2 minutes.
Of course, also feel free, if you do feel comfortable speaking up, raise your hand or just unmute yourself if you want to give an example, or are thinking about what message might this student need to hear. Where might this student get pointed at? Give a minute to think.
Very good. Here we go. Acknowledge his feelings, commit to working with him to find resources. Thank you so much, Tanisha. So we have here acknowledgement. I see you. I see you is important. You're not alone. We're here to support you. That Maria is going to carry the way through, because the first thing that students are prepared to hear is no, we cannot help you. No, this is impossible. No, this is difficult. No, go to this room, go to this window, go to this office. So that's excellent. I love it.
Does anyone have any ideas about what else you might need to ask? Karen, thank you. What bills he might need help with?
Very good.
What, if any, assistance he's already receiving? Again, really important question. What are you already eligible for? What are you already getting? And how might that indicate other supports?
Very good.
I love that Wendy's comment. Thank you first for letting me know that this is happening. Again, sort of, I see you. Thank you for trusting me. That's great.
Excellent, Wendy. Mm-hmm.
These are all great examples.
Right. We have, I mean, this is high level priority, right? Anyone should be equipped to ask these questions, and anyone at our colleges and institutions should know what's the next step. We have here SOS program folks, but who and where is important. Now that we are virtual, or some of us are a hybrid, it's important to know also that students should get examples and should get some Zoom time to navigate this. I hear from many places where we work with institutions that food banks, for example, offer these assistance when the resources are not on campus. But you have some resources on campus, and you have your pathway coaches to figure out what that would look like for your institution. So I encourage all of you to take advantage of that. Let's look at what these questions could be. So the what and the how. First, we want to look into what we said here, right? Like the partner employment situation is important, because if the partner is not employed, then as a family, they can qualify for cash assistance, most likely for childcare, most likely for utility assistance. And then if they don't have, which is to the other question, what supports are you already, or what benefits are you already tapping into? Maybe SNAP is in the mix, as well as WIC, right? The age of this kid is going to be important. Some of you have women's centers, some of you can connect with diaper banks, but in terms of food, it's important to not talk about food stamps right away, or not mentioning the public benefits. So what to say and how we say it is going to be addressing stigma. How do we approach it in a way that is more equity focused? Is going to completely make the students' experience better. So talking about food resources can mean food stamps, but can also be the food bank, can also be food vouchers, and can also be the food pantry. So I encourage everyone to always ask, what other resources are you using and do you know of? Because we have some support, or a lot of support, depending on the situation of your campus. And then of course, this is open enrollment period. Students get in debt because they don't have health insurance, because they don't know that they can potentially get Medicaid, and they get in debt. That damages their credit, and then that sometimes impedes them from re-enrolling because they have a bunch of other complications. Some of you posed a question about other financial resources and education. That can be a follow-up into all these mix. Let's see the how. So again, you have your emergency aid, and that is a one-time. You may have some transportation, and students may be able to go into programs that are linked to public benefits and get transportation assistance, as well as the food resources that we mentioned. Connecting them with work is super important. So this is an opportunity to engage your career services office. Students want to work, they want dignity, they want to feel like they are doing all that it takes so they can get to the finish line. So empowering them with information about how to get a work study position. Being eligible for work study opens the door so they can potentially be eligible for food stamps, but connecting them with a position allows them to learn and be advocates for this work. They will promote this information amongst their classmates, amongst their circles, so it has a ripple effect. And then the benefits in question, of course, are Medicaid, as we spoke about, TANF, SNAP, childcare, LIHEAP, and unemployment. So these are the ones that we want to stress, and these are the ones that we want to focus on. But because tax season is coming up, and because it's open enrollment period, I would say, please, please, please equip your staff and equip your teams to be the disseminators, the advocates for this. Next slide. All right, we have a couple of minutes left. We have 9 minutes left, and I want to just focus on simple things that you can do and that I've been already mentioning, but I also want you to tell me what other simple things you are doing. So stressing that help is available, that you're not alone, that we have your back is going to be very important. You can say that at a service level. So anyone on campus can say it, faculty can say it, student support services, coaches can say it, advocates can say it, communication can say it, your emails, your social media, your student portal, your website, all of these places can indicate, yes, help is available. Normalizing the conversation about public benefits is fundamental because they're very stigmatized. A lot of people feel very strongly about them. First, they feel like we're not a social service agency, we shouldn't be doing that. Other people have this perception that students who live on public benefits receive tons of money, which we saw by looking at the SNAP amounts. It's not that much. And cash assistance is less than $200, depending on the number of children, right? But it can be $200 or less every 2 weeks. So it's not a large amount of money, and we have to work and shift our mindsets on how do we perceive as a college community public benefits so we can do justice on how do we sell them to students in a way that it is normal to get other supports to pay for college. And this is the help. Remember, you don't pay for it. Taxpayers pay for it. They're there for other people to use, and only 3% of the students who are eligible use it. So we have a lot of opportunity here. If we engage faculty, staff, and students in helping us disseminate this information, if we work together to pinpoint students to the SOS offices, to the coaches, to the navigators, that's going to be the game changer. Some of you have already centralized supports. For some of you who don't, you can look at our guide and ask questions to your guided pathways coaches so they can provide additional information. Partnerships are king. I would name a couple. Partnering with a free legal nonprofit, it's going to help students do the appeals when they get denied and they don't submit one piece of paper that was missing from the application, or when they have to be reconsidered because there was a mismatch into mailings or whatever communication the county assistance office submitted. Your free legal nonprofit is going to also advocate for students and can help you follow up. So follow up is part of this loop of providing assistance. So I encourage everyone to look at where your partnerships are housed, have these centralized. You may be considering also a task force, a basic needs task force. It provides different points of entry for this information. So everyone together can work to lift the student. And the other partnership I would say is health centers for all the mental health and VITA sites for the tax preparation. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about strategies. We can take this down. If you can share a strategy that is really working at your campus to connect students with public benefits, we would love to hear. I'm going to share a couple, and we're going to put all of this information in your private site. But part of what I think is magical here is the knowledge in the room makes everyone connect, so you can follow up and you can mimic what others are doing, but also open possibilities for new work. So what are the strategies that are really working at your campus to connect students with public benefits? You can drop something in the chat or unmute. We want to hear from you.
Or what questions remain. If there's a question that came up as we went through this that you'd like to address. And we only have a couple more minutes.
Yeah. In terms of, I'm going to just start sharing, in terms of strategies, we see that student ambassadors are really making a difference. CUNY has an incredible model in New York. We also see Swipe Out Hunger and RISE doing this type of work. We see that nudging students goes far and beyond in terms of impact. So nudging students via text or nudging students via email with personalized messages that are concise, precise, short, and action-driven is helping students better understand and better learn. We talked about adding this information to the syllabus. It's one of the things that works very well, having a task force in place. So these strategies are revisited every semester because we change students every semester. And so we have to reinvent the wheel in a way that we are responsive to our students. We have also seen that by ways of engaging board members and partners in creating these alliances with external partners and funders, colleges and universities are getting funding to do this work. Her funds have the college for the institutional portion has some money that can allow you to connect with students who are not enrolled, so they need to re-enroll. And this is one of the ways to communicate with them. There are supports for you available. We want you back, and you can use that for that purpose. If we have no more questions, all of what we've talked about today is going to be posted on your site. You can share with your teams. You can reach out to your coaches to talk about what does that look like or create a strategy. You have tons of information from this initiative, so I don't want to repeat any of it. But if you have any questions, please feel free to share right now or come back to us later. Angelina, I'm going to pass it back to you so we can close.
Yeah, I'll just wrap us up with 1 minute left. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. I dropped a link in the chat for a little bit of an evaluation, but also an opportunity to tell us if you have additional questions or needs so that we can follow up. The one last thing I'll say, and you may have heard this from your Pathways coaches, but next week we'll be sending out instructions and an activity that's due sort of in March for this work. This is our last session, one of the year, which is crazy, but also our last session focused on support. So we're going to start transitioning to looking at your campus, looking at the supports that are provided and thinking about the gaps there, thinking about the different offices and how they're working together or not. So you'll get more information about that next Monday. And with that, I will wrap us up. I will say thank you so much. I hope you'll have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a wonderful rest of the year, because we won't see you again until January, which is wild. So thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, you can always email me as well.